That we have apologies from the Mayor for lateness and apologies from Councillor Fulton. Have you had any other apologies? No other apologies. Someone care to move that the apologies be sustained? Moved by Councillor Davies, seconded by Councillor Rainey.
Mr. Chair, I'll need to leave the
Well, that's fine when you're ready to leave. If we can be efficient today, yes, we will be. Yes. But I note that someone didn't think we would be, so we'll have to see how well we can go. So it's been moved and seconded that the apologies be sustained. I'll put it all in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. Carried. Now the order of business is altered slightly. We're going to deal with item 9, the Nelson Regional Development Agency Draft Statement of Intent 2016-17, immediately prior to item 8, just to make it more appropriate for those that are attending and not having to wait through another item. I would remind everybody that we're video live streaming, you're on camera. It's going out to YouTube, to the world. Yeah. Public forums, there is no one indicated today that they wish to speak to us at public forum, so there is no public forum. We have got a late item in the public excluded section of the meeting. It is the Forestry Review Supplementary Information Report, and we will resolve at the appropriate time the necessary motion to actually do that as a late item. Item 3, is any members any interest to declare or to note to go into the interest register? Anything on the agenda today that affects the pecuniary interest particularly of any member? Yes, Councillor Rainey.
Mr. Chair, item number 8, and go to this cycle of
Thank you. Just a matter of procedure. I think it is appropriate actually that in the open section of the meeting that we do resolve now that we deal with this late item, even though it's going to be in the public excluded section. So we need to move a motion, and I'll call on Mr. Murray to do so, that the public excluded item regarding forestry review supplementary information be considered at this meeting as a major item not on the agenda pursuant to section 46A 7 little a of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987 to enable a timely decision to be made. Would you be moving that as Chairman of the Commercial Committee? Absolutely. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? I have a seconder from Deputy Mayor.
Can I just, thank you Mr. Chair, can I just ask, are we going to get a hard copy of this? Thank you.
It's being circulated at the moment. I'll put that all in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. The ayes have it. Item number 5, confirmation of minutes. Pages 10 to 18, minutes of a meeting on the 14th of July, been circulated. Do I have someone to move that they be approved as a true and correct record? I have Mr. Murray, seconded by Councillor McGurk. Is there any discussion? There isn't. I'll put it all in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no, carried. Item 6, the status report of the Governance Committee on pages 19 and 20. Is there any questions on the status report on page 20? No questions? No, nothing the officers wish to present to us? So I have had a mover. Do I have a seconder? It's Councillor McGurk. I'll put it all in favour, please say aye. Against, no, carried. Moving now to item 7, which is the Chairperson's report. It's been circulated. I do want to just round out a little bit more of the achievements that the committee's achieved over the period that I didn't get included in my report, and I think these things are worthy of noting. It's worthwhile to note that the council increased its Standard & Poor's rating from AA- to AA during the term, so that reflects good governorship and good management. I would also refer to the fact that the matters that have been considered and dealt with by the committee include not only the CCOs, the CCTOs, but also the council-controlled organisations, which, of course, are the Nelson Regional Economic Development Agency and its predecessors, the Tasman Bays Heritage Trust, and the Bishop Serta Trust. So those are all of the other things that I didn't mention in the chairperson's report there that are essentially good news for the way the committee has dealt with them. It's also worthwhile to note that we've had a clear audit report, and very pleased to note that the auditor, his general representative, Mr. Bede Kearney, is here today. Bede, if we get through the business in time before you have to leave to the stage where we're doing the receiving of the annual report, happy for you to speak to us if you wish. And if time is reaching that stage where you have to leave, let me know, and we'll provide an opportunity for you to, because we would appreciate and value your feedback as our major auditor representative. And finally, on top of all the other things that we've done there, we have accumulated a significant emergency fund over the 3 years as a council. So I think we've done very, very well there. So at this stage, it's my pleasure really to thank everybody, thank the members of the committee and the other councillors who have attended from time to time, senior management, and all other staff. And particularly, I want to just mention the fact that during this term we did set up a commercial subcommittee and an audit risk and finance subcommittee, and we appointed members to them. They're both here today as members of this committee. And I can say that, in my opinion, it's been a very valuable exercise that we've done, and the council and the city has benefited from this new procedure that we've established by having these people here. Later in the meeting, I'm sure you'll both have an opportunity to speak, particularly when your committee reports come through. So, Councillor Matheson, I've had an indication you wish to speak.
Yeah, I presume, sir, that you've moved your report. Can I just make a couple of quick comments with regard to your role? First of all, I would like to congratulate you on the way you've conducted the business of this committee over the last 3 years. This committee is probably one of the most influential that we have in council, and it is quite rightly called governance. I think you've handled yourself extremely well, sir. You've been very fair and ensured that everyone had a very correct and proper understanding of what it's about and their influence within it. Also wish to touch briefly on your comments regarding Mr. Murray and Mr. Peters. I think the inclusion of them into the wider circle of the governance committee has been extremely valuable for us all. In fact, many of us have learnt quite a few skills from both of them, and I won't mention Mr. Murray's in detail, but I think you will find that both those gentlemen have been certainly very valuable contributors to the governance of the city, and I quite rightly endorse what you said, sir, by thanking them for that. But really, it is an opportunity for your last meeting for us as a committee to thank you for your leadership and for your drive, and your success has been outlined in your report, and you are to be thanked for that and your contribution to the city. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much.
Thank you for your kind words, Deputy Mayor. Much appreciated. And I will move that the chairperson's report be received. Do I have a second? Second from the Deputy Chair. Any further comment? There's not. I'll put it all in favour, please say aye. Against, no, carried. Thank you. We move now to item number 9, which I indicated earlier in the order of business. And I would welcome to the table Mr. John Palmer and Mr. Mark Rawson, whom we haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, but look forward to hearing from you. Firstly, we'll ask for the officers to present the report, and then we will hear from the representatives. Chris is there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the first statement of intent, draft statement of intent from the newly established Nelson Regional Development Agency. The timing is different from what it would usually be. Usually we ask for our draft statements of intent by 1st of March, but then RDA obviously wasn't in existence at that stage, and we felt it was better to have the new board in place and the new Chief Executive Officer in place also. So they have turned around this statement of intent in a relatively short period of time, acknowledging that there is still, we are in a transitional year still in terms of picking up the business previously conducted by the two agencies, but also setting new priorities for the agency moving forward. So I'll leave the Chair and the Chief Executive to talk to the detail of the statement of intent, but happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. I don't want to say too much. The statement of intent speaks for itself, but it is different from what you might normally expect. But I just wanted to perhaps traverse a little bit of the background from the report that was received by Council in December and the recommendation to have a transition board. Is that better? Yep. The agreement of a transition board which I chaired, and the aim of the transition board was to ensure that the merger of the two organisations achieved a seamless transition, that all the staff transferred on day one, and that we had a working business on day one. And I'm pleased to say that that process has achieved all of its aims and done that significantly under budget, so that on the 1st of July we did have one organisation. We had the phones working, we had people in place, and even though there are some transition issues still to be solved as we deal with particularly NZTE and their fit out in the building, that has gone extremely well, and it's a credit certainly to John Hutton, who we employed for that period to manage the transition, and he did an outstanding job. But when we arrived on July 1, we did have the new board that you appointed, and by that stage we had made the appointment of Mark Rawson. Mark has come with a very solid background in exactly the sort of business that we're trying to put together, and a high level of success in his roles in Rotorua. We're delighted to have him. And already in trying to put together both a statement of intent in a short time frame and to establish what our priorities are for both action and delivery over the next 12 months that Mark's going to talk about, I think we've made a lot of progress. I am very satisfied that all of the things that we set out to do to date we have achieved on time and effectively. The real business, of course, of the new agency is actually delivering results in the economic development area, including tourism. We know that we've got yet to do that, but I think we have established some pretty clear things in time chunks that Mark's going to talk briefly about over the next 12 months, so that by the time we get to the 30th of June, not only will we have some runs on the board, but we will have a very clear articulation of exactly what it is we're trying to do and what you should expect from us.
Thank you very much, and sorry I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you all yet, but I'm sure we'll get that time, and I really look forward to working with everybody in this wonderful part of the country. Just to follow on from John's introduction, and as outlined in the statement of intent, there's four sort of key priorities for me and the team over the next 3 to 4 months, really. Real focus on that fit for purpose, which is just about pulling the teams together. You know, from my perspective, the team is absolutely critical component of being able to deliver, and we're well on the track of pulling the teams together and getting alignment, and also an opportunity for myself to listen as much as possible to what's happened before and where the priorities are going forward. But the second area is probably more of my focus right now, and certainly working with the board, is around getting a really tight strategy in place, and I use the word strategy on purpose for the fact of really trying to build a 3-year focus for the activities that we will undertake and the areas we will focus on, with a view to making sure that we align the resources to get real tangible outcomes in a fairly for the long term, and not just trying to focus on what I might observe as quite a lot of tactical activities that sometimes don't quite all hang together. So that's a big focus for me in that area. I mean, the business is pretty simple. We seem to have 3 main areas of business. There's a destination management function, which we'll be looking to focus on a lot, and I do use destination management, not destination marketing, on purpose, as the destination management function is about certainly telling the story of the destination, but also ensuring that we deliver on the experience. There's a visitor component to that, and that's probably been quite high priority of recent times and quite visible, but I certainly see that as a real priority across visit, a place to live and work, a place to study, and eventually also a place to invest. So that's our number 1 area. And then the other 2 areas of focus being in the business development area, working with all the partners in the community around trying to build the capability and capacity of both the businesses and the business people within the Nelson region, and then the last area is more in that investment attraction area, which is about ensuring that we're providing really good, solid information in the first instance against which decision making can be made across both the public and private sector, but also starting to work through the opportunities for additional investment or attraction of capital into the region, in particular with a focus on working with those existing investors within the community. There's a reason why they're really strong. They've been here for a long time, and there's a whole infrastructure and serious amount of capital already established around their businesses. So that's primarily our priority. And the last couple of points is, well, the most important one at the moment is the regional identity project, which I see as absolutely critical. It will create the focus for us around those 3 sort of key strategy areas, and one thing I would just make a comment on about the regional identity project. I think the board and myself, and we've had a few meetings with the project team, it's very important that we do understand that it's not just about a brand, it's actually about a regional investment prioritisation project, if you like, and then obviously carrying off a story is really important, but also there is a number of other facets in there to do with where do we focus our investment attraction efforts, the business cases that sit around that, and particularly looking at how that may best align between the public and the private sector. And the 4th area of focus at the moment, and I have really enjoyed getting out and talking to the stakeholders, in particular probably a few of the private sector stakeholders in the first instance. And the whole point of that is certainly come from an organisation and philosophy of we're only a cog in the wheel, and it's platforms of partnerships that will actually enable us to make things happen. And we absolutely need to be out there ensuring that we're hearing right, listening right, and looking for partners and then being able to drive the outcomes. So that's kind of the gestation of the statement of intent that sits in front of you today. First 6 months or 2 until Christmas really is sort of saying we're out there, we're forming, listening, trying to pull all this together into a really tight and pretty focused business plan that we'll look to bring back to you with some what you might term as a little more normal statement of intent type process post that period of time. So thanks, and look forward to any questions.
seeking questions on the papers that have been circulated. So it's open for questions. Mr. Murray.
Thank you, through the chair. First of all, thank you, Mr. Palmer, for putting together the new organisation. I recall from the initial papers where we talked about the EDA and Tourism Tasman getting together was very much a let's put a new organisation in place for a fresh look and a fresh approach, and I get the feeling we're certainly achieving that. And welcome, Mark, welcome on board, welcome to the region. It's fabulous to have you here. I have three things really that I wanted to talk about this morning, if I could. First of all, they're more comments and observations than anything else. On page 41 of our agenda, I'm not sure what it is of yours, but we've got the 2017 budget there. And while I haven't really looked at it in too much detail, I just noticed that it's a pretty tight budget. So I just wanted to point out for the committee that the total operating income budgeted is 2.6 million, and they're trying to run it with a very, very small surplus of 24,000. And by my simple maths, that's a 1% bottom line. And that means there's not a lot of shake and move room really in there if they're running to that budget. So I'd just like to make the comment that looks pretty tight, and if you can achieve that, well done. And it doesn't leave a lot, albeit the depreciation might be a bit high, but that's okay. My second comment is on the page before that, on page 8 of your paper and page 40 of ours, and it talks about reporting through to the TDC on a similar basis to what the is coming through to the shareholder. And presumably the level of reporting to TDC has been agreed with Mr. Ward in terms of what's actually going through there, because the TDC, of course, are not a shareholder, they are a stakeholder, and they have a different arrangement with the NCC to what we have with you. So presumably that's all okay, Mr. Ward? Yes, excellent. And my third point is around this is great to see the start of this new organisation, because really this is the first sort of like thing we've seen that says, yeah, we got things underway, which is fabulous. I would ask that at some stage that we see the wind up of the EDA and Tourism Tasman back here in terms of how that's happened, and that's actually happened, because it's the death of two others, I presume. So they were my three comments. That will be for a future committee, and I'd ask that that come forward at some stage.
So if I may just respond to that comment, Mr. Murray is absolutely correct. The two winding up of the two organisations is still a work in progress. We don't foresee any issues with that process, but we do need to go through the steps as required under both the deed of the EDA and the Companies Act in respect of the NTT. But we will report back to this committee or its subsequent committee.
Good, thank you. I just had a follow-up question to Mr. Palmer.
Chair, perhaps if I could just respond to the first
Sure.
two points that John's raised. The budget is tight. The simple approach we're taking is what funding we have, we will live within. What that means is that we will simply shape the business on the funding that's available. So there won't be any wishing and hoping, and if we want more things done, then that will require more funding. We expect to initiate in this period a number of things that we hope will get some third-party funding, but getting some focus on what we do, and it will require saying no to some things on the basis that this is the budget and we're going to live within it. So I can give you an absolute assurance on that, and Mark will be in severe trouble if we're not living within it. I can tell you that. The second, can I just comment on the report to the TDC? It's our intent and my strong intent that this is going to be a rather more open organisation than in the past. That's not a criticism, that's just the style I adopted. I don't think there's much point in doing that. This is a community organisation. We have plans, for example, we're going to hold some board meetings outside Nelson. The first thing we're going to do is go and hold a board meeting in Motueka and meet the Motueka community. This is a regional organisation. It's got to have a regional focus, and it's got to have regional stakeholders. The TDC are an important stakeholder And our intent is that the quarterly report, it's really a stakeholder report more than a shareholder report, that they should see it. Because my particular aim, they've said, when you've got some results, we might consider giving you more funding. Well, getting a better stakeholder relationship with TDC is a priority, and that's the reason why we're doing it.
Yeah, thank you. That was good clarification and good information on your intentions. And it was in relation to that I was going to have a follow-up question myself in terms of the funding. The private sector investment in programs, you've got a figure there of income. Are you anticipating that any of the beneficiaries, and particularly in the tourism industry, are likely to be continuing to make payments as they have in their past?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, we will be looking to generate some revenue from those who are receiving our services. If it'll be structured exactly the way as it was in the past, I don't see that as a likely outcome. I think there's a far better way of doing that, but it'll just take us a wee bit of time to absolutely understand that and the transition to a different model, because there is some agreements locked in at the moment for periods of time with some of those stakeholders. So definitely see a different model over time.
Sure. Any other questions? I've got the Deputy Chair, Councillor Ackland, and then I have Councillor Rainey and Councillor McGurk.
Hi, John and Mark, thanks for coming along. I might have missed a trick, but when will we have that conversation where you say no to us potentially about projects or goals or objectives that council or stakeholders might otherwise see as things that your organisation can do?
Well, perhaps I should take responsibility for that, and I'm happy to. If it's not within our current level of activity, which you've been reminded this morning that this is a very tight budget, then our response will be, if it's not within our current framework of activity and there's new things that are important, that will require new funding to be delivered.
Okay.
If I could just comment on that also through the chair. I'm in conversations with Mark on a regular basis. One of the things he has asked me is, do we keep on doing some of the smaller projects that the EDA has started? And I've said no. We need to have a clear focus on what is important, and if that means I need to come back to the council and say we're going to stop doing things that we have done in the past on the advice of Mark and John, then I think it's really important that we do set up the organisation to deliver on its outcomes and not on the tactical projects that it has in the past.
Communicating will be the key to the success. Councillor Rainey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to echo Mr. Murray's words. John, thank you for your sterling efforts in getting us to where we are today. I think it's great, and welcome, Mark. It's nice to have you here, and I'm looking forward to having a chat with you at some stage. I just have a question, perhaps to John, and it may well be an operational question, in which case you may not be able to, or may not want to answer it, but could you explain the role of the ex-CE of the EDA, Mr. Findlater? Does he have a role with the NRDA, and are you able to explain what that would be?
Yeah, sure. The arrangement that we've made with Bill Findlater is that he is working 3 days a week on a 12-month contract. It's not a full-time role, but we thought as part of the transition it was important that we got all of the Findlater IP, if you like, inside the organisation, that we should take some time to do that. It suited Bill to be working 3 days a week, and he will be working specifically in areas that Mark directs, in the areas that we think he's got most to offer, and a lot of that will be in the investment area. But there's no magic or secret about it. That's their relationship. Yep.
Councillor McGurk.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions. Thanks, John and Mark, for the information. Some of the questions I think have probably partly answered. In terms of the Regional Identity Project, one of the indicators you've got is about the uptake from stakeholders. What sort of What sort of uptake are you looking for?
In respect of the performance measure element,
Yeah.
that's really saying the amount of stakeholder investment we have in carrying off the programs that would flow from the regional investment, the regional identity project. What I'm effectively trying to say there is, if people value that and really see its of value and want to assist in really driving that forward, then that would look to have a partnership which would have some investment around it, proper partnership, not just a supplier relationship sort of approach. So that was, in a technical sense, to do with the performance measure, that's what that was meaning. However, obviously one of the most critical elements, if not the most critical element of the regional identity project, will actually be ensuring that it is anchored and owned by many parts of the Nelson region, certainly not just our organisation. We're just trying to get the framework to get there.
That probably takes me to the second part of the question I've got. So you've gone out and done this bit of stakeholder engagement sort of fairly early in your tenure, I suppose. Are there any things out there that they're reasonably happy with and would like to see continuing?
Yeah, I mean, good question. And the ultimate answer is, it's far too early for me to say too much, because my diary's been fairly full and I have got to talk to lots of different people. But I, I really want to make sure that we actually get out and really listen and try and pull that together. What I would say is, I think there is some elements that certainly are being well appreciated. However, the connectedness, so hence actually the gestation of why you would end up with a regional development agency combining the two sort of externally facing public functions, is probably the most common comment that I get back. And yeah, I think it's a bit early for me to be able to say that just at the moment.
Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, Mark, and nice to see you, John. Can I just really get down to some basic fundamentals which are going to hit us very shortly in the holiday period? Dear to my heart for some years has been the visitor industry, and last year we struck a bit of a bomb that landed upon us with regard to numbers and activities. We're not obviously expecting a slowdown in that for this coming period. I raised it the other day that are we ready? Are we ready for this extra influx? And I think that's being addressed somewhere along the line in discussions with Chris. I'll just ask you two questions very quickly if I can. One of them is, are we ready? And secondly, if you look at the visit industry in the greater Nelson region, what do you think, in your opinion, stands out as an area that we need to concentrate a little bit more on?
I'm sure you will. Just in respect of the Are You Ready? Funnily enough, so yes, the forward bookings, forward indicators would tend to suggest that this visitor season's not going to be much or any different. In fact, probably grow a little bit on what was there last year. Are we ready? We had a series of conversations going on with the likes of Uniquely Nelson, etc., around that, because of my observation of the inner city component is a really important component of that. And that is a critical element of why I talk about our business having an area in destination management, not just destination marketing. So matching the promise with matching the promise with delivery. Are we ready? It appears to have gone not too bad, but it does relate to the other point of where do you see the opportunity in the visitor industry. Certainly, an observation from my perspective is a focus in the value area versus the volume area, and I have had the experience of coming from probably one of the highest volume areas in New Zealand and have seen what that looks like. But the second element of that is, my observation would be there's a significant opportunity to upscale the offer a bit, and on a concept of one to few type experience. So smaller operators delivering a pretty high level and more engaging experience to maybe 8 to 10 players than to busloads of 20 or 30 or 40. Because my observation is that, you know, that's not what the destination's about, and perhaps not also where certainly some of the visitor product is positioned. For example, some of the dock estate, which obviously is a major product provider here in the visitor sector, you know, it's coming under a fair bit of pressure around New Zealand. And I was just with out in the Able Tasman yesterday, actually, just talking about the positioning of the opportunity to make it just that wee bit more exclusive, and the fact that only, you know, a certain number of people get to have this experience every year. And our understanding from the international trends is those sorts of things are very high on their radar screen, to the point actually that one of the operators, or inbound operators I was with yesterday, who's sort of like major sales channel, shall we say, they're quite interested. Their customers are starting to ask about how can they potentially be engaged in some of those, you know, conservation/social type projects. There is a feel of they're wanting to be engaged in that type of product. So, you know, that would be my observation, and I really don't realise it's very dangerous to have an observation within 5 or 6 weeks. But we'll be very focused on the value discussion, and I think targeting that visitor that fits right with a value and a one to few type activity, targeting versus one to many, which has a number of destination management issues, which will come back to your table, I suspect, often.
Good, thank you. Councillor Fulton.
Oh yes, thank you. Look, I had a question which you've almost partly answered just in answering Councillor Matheson's question, and I guess I was wanting to ask you about the synergy between your agreement and outcomes in our Vision 2060 document, which obviously has a lot about the environment and social policy. So I guess when you're looking at branding and our regional image and identity, are you turning your mind to Nelson's 2060 document?
I think the comment I'd make there is from the Regional Identity Project, I do see it as it is about an investment prioritisation type process in the first instance, of which the brand will sit underneath. And when I say investment prioritisation, I am meaning a discussion that we can all have around our organisation, the alignment with the private sector, the likes of yourselves, and central government. And then I would have thought that you know, alignment with the longer vision is absolutely a fundamental of that. However, I think one of the challenges is you have so many great things that it has to be unique and compelling. The regional identity, we have to focus on the differentiation, not the same as, and have a compelling case that sits behind that. So I think that's a little bit of the message that John is articulating in respect of focus, and perhaps not spending a lot of time and effort on things that are what I call me too, versus actually really enhancing the 4 or 5 things that we can stand out from the crowd and win in. I'll leave it to you.
Over the period. Thank you, Penny. I had a question, and it results from, I learnt, I think, day before yesterday, the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment have put together a $12 million fund to be made available over the next 4 years for co-funding in the regions. So I hope that you guys will look into the possibility of us benefiting from that.
Yes, I think you're referring to the Tourism Growth Partnership Fund, which actually was there before. It's just they've repositioned it to prioritise regions. So we'll definitely be looking at those opportunities.
Good. Are there any further questions? Well, there isn't. So I wish to thank the Chair and Chief Executive, John and Mark, for coming along today and conveying your intentions, your visions, your ideas, and I think we can look forward as we go into next year, having gone through a transition ourselves on the 8th of October. Hopefully there won't be too many changes to face, but whoever's here will benefit, I'm sure, from the work that you're doing and the way you've set it up. So well done, and thank you for coming. Right, we do have to officially, procedurally move the receipt of the report. It's been moved by Councillor Noonan and seconded by Councillor Davey. Is there any further discussion? I'll put it all in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? No. Carried. And that deals with item number 9. And we go back now on the agenda to item number 8.
Need to move the second one as well.
I'm sorry, before we do, there is a second part of the second part, the Nelson Regional Development Agency Statement of Intent be approved subject to any minor edits. We have made no minor edits, but it's been moved by Councillor Noonan and seconded by Councillor McGurk. All in favour, please say aye. Against? No. Carried. Thank you. Item number 8. Who is the presenter? Mr. Ward. We're looking now at pages 23 to pages 28.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got no corrections or changes to be made to the report, so I'll take it as read and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, well, you'll note that in the minutes, this matter was dealt with at the last meeting, and the report has been circulated now. We have a question from Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. When this first started coming to this council, it was a gondola society, and as part of that we might have the ability to have take bikes on the gondolas and have mountain biking. It seems to have changed totally now to whereby it's mountain biking first and gondola second. When did this occur, this change of focus?
So through the chair, I'm not sure there has been a particular change in focus. I think the concept was being developed through the series of business case, the work that the Cycle Lift Society has carried out. It has always been the Cycle Lift Society, and I think this is just a continuation and a refinement of their ideas. So I don't believe there has been a fundamental change.
Question, Mr. Chair, how much money have they raised to this date, please, towards the recommendations that are in this report?
So through the chair, the recommendations were that, and what was approved through the annual plan was that 50,000 would be made available in the first instance to the society in order for them to be able to do some work. The second 50,000 was contingent on them fundraising. So I don't believe they have started that fundraising process because they need the information from the first stage of the work to inform the business case going forward and the investment case.
Thank you.
So just to follow up on that, if the 50,000 is granted, it's going to be used to employ a person. Is the role of that person to achieve the other 50,000 or the contra amount?
So through the chair, the initial description was that they would employ a project manager who would put together the different parts of the project in this phase. As the society worked through what that person would be required to do, it became apparent that it required too broad a skill set and that it would be better served to employ consultants on the particular parts of the business case, and I think the fundraising side of it was seen as a separate set of skills from the project management side and the technical side. So they would be looking to split the money amongst consultants to perform the different tasks required.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Ward, just to clarify, so this is before this committee, having been through an annual plan process where a resolution of council was made to provide this funding, subject to this committee approving a project plan, and the project plan is the one that's attached to the report that you've provided, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
And you, in terms of your advice, having talked to them and considered their report, do you have any issues with it, or are you satisfied with that report in terms of its covering off the first stage of providing a business case and so on, or providing at least enough of a case to be able to launch the second branch of funding for the Nelson Cycle Lift Society?
So through the chair, I think the society have taken the project as far as they can without additional funding. I think what I believe council was trying to achieve through the annual plan was to really get the project to a stage where people could make decisions on whether it actually should progress or not. That's right, and so I believe that would I have liked to seen a more detailed business proposal? Yes, I would have. Is there enough in here, and is there enough in terms of the additional recommendation, the clause of the recommendation, which asks that the chief executives of council and the regional development agency have the sign off in terms of the economic brief? I think I inserted that clause because it allows us to ensure that the proposal, the business case, is being developed to fit our needs as well as an investment prospectus need. So that was with inclusion of that clause, I'm comfortable that we can progress to the next stage. At any time, if it looks like if we get information back that says it's not a goer, then I would expect all expenditure to stop at that stage and us to come back to council and report that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think some of the questions that Councillor Ackland asked is probably sort of close to what I was asking. So at the moment, the Cycle Lift Society consists of a group of volunteers.
That's correct, yes.
So when it comes to producing a product of some sort to help us inform the next stage, who's doing the report? Of the volunteers, or are they employing a consultant to actually produce something?
So through the chair, I would expect that, and much similar to the previous reports that have been prepared by the society, the consultant would be within the consultant's brief to prepare a report on their technical area of expertise, be it the engineering side of it or the investment side of it.
Yeah. Carry on. Subsequent to the response before, you would have expected more. Reading through the report there, it's rather brief, and I'm wondering what, in terms of the project plan, what are the key deliverables? Because at the moment, the way it appears to me is that they'll produce something, but we don't know what success might look like, or what failure might look like, or what. Yeah, because to me it's a bit open-ended to say, give it to our CE in the new development agency, the CE there, to decide what success looks like. Seems a bit open and arbitrary. I'm just wondering if you could sort of help me clarify what sort of key deliverables we might want to see to say whether this project is viable or not. Some kind of objective standard is probably what I'm looking for.
So through the chair, we have a responsibility to ensure that the numbers, the economic numbers, stack up in relation to, if I go back to the original request of council, on council, it is going to be as a landowner to permit an activity on its land. And so we need to have, but it also involves some infrastructure, which could be around for quite a significant period of time. So from a council perspective, as a landowner, we need to have some confidence that the business or the entity that runs the business is on a sound financial footing, and that we won't have infrastructure placed on our land that may be redundant if the whole enterprise falls over. So that's the key in terms of what we are looking out of from the society. Now, the society have consistently said they would not be looking for council funding for the business itself. They see that as being independent and a third party again. So they are looking to prepare an investment case for would-be investors to come in and put the money into the venture. So in terms of the outcomes that we're looking for, we need to be sure that it's sound economically, and that's the addition of that clause should cover that. The Cycle Lift Society, I think they probably need some more guidance in terms of what will be a fit for purpose investment case, and I would see that coming through this next stage as well.
I'm not sure if it's been answered or not, but my overall take, well, let me ask the first question. It relates to Councillor McGurk's question around the society being a group of volunteers, and I don't know who the volunteers are per se, and I don't know, therefore, have no ability to assess their governance ability to actually manage this project at the level we would be looking for our contribution. So the first question is around, I suppose pretty straight up, does the society have the governance skills to undertake this project? Now, that might be a very unfair question for you, Mr. Ward, but I can't tell from these papers, and that's a question I've got.
I would answer that by saying they have had the governance skills to get the project to this stage, and there has been quite a significant amount of work done over the past 3 or 4 years to bring it here, and including quite a considerable amount of time. So they have got some financial and accountancy skills on the board. There are also some tourism skills on there. So they do have a good mix of opportunities, but they have been working on a voluntary basis for a number of years. And I think there really needs some refreshing in terms of some new ideas coming in from the consultants as to how to get it to a marketable state.
Okay, and thank you for that. And so my take on what the request is initially they wanted 50,000 to employ someone to go and do some work, which now we're saying no, we're not going to employ someone. What we're going to do is employ various consultants to do various projects. Do we know the specifics of who the consultants are, what the projects are, and what the approximate cost of each of the projects are? Have we got that level of detail, or is it just we going to employ some? We'll come back to the chief executive with who we think we're going to engage about what, and what that outcome might look like at this stage, and that's why it's going to the chief executive for approval.
Yeah, so through the chair, I mean, the key tasks that have been identified are market research and analysis. So there's a piece of work around refining the numbers as to the offering. An update of the capital costs. I would expect that would require some technical skills and from an engineering perspective, and building the business case with a recommendation to proceed or not. So that there's some. Those are the three kind of strands to ensure that the product that they are bringing to market is the one that the market wants, that technically it can be delivered, and that financially it stacks up as a business case. So those are the three areas.
Okay, so assuming they can do that for the 50,000, which would, and it all pans out, and we go ahead or they go ahead and sell the whole proposal to someone, will they repay us our 50,000 for funding all of their due diligence work?
Through the chair, that has never been asked for by council.
Okay. Well, sorry, I had one more question. And again, this is just me. This is pretty new to me. It's the first time I've seen it. Has there been a high-level feasibility study done? Is there sort of one that sits right over the top of this that says that this looks like a likely goer of a project with some high-level figures?
Sorry, through the chair, yes, there has. Council received that information and commissioned its own independent review of that, and the message at that time was there was enough in there to suggest it could go ahead.
Just as a follow-up question on that before I go to the other questions, the initial $10,000 grant that council made to the group originally 15. Has there been any other subsequent grants in between that period?
Through the chair, no, and that full grant covered our independent review of their assessment as well.
And have you a record of staff time, management time in dealing with this as a cost to the ratepayer?
Through the chair, no, you know, we deal with a number of issues, and to record time to that level of detail probably wouldn't be best use of our time.
Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Mr. Murray asked many of the questions I had. But further on that, in regards to the change of what they feel would be valued of that 50k, in your view, Mr. Ward, would that be still fitting in with what the gesture, the desire of council was?
Thank you. Through the chair, yes, I believe so. I think council is trying to get some sense of the viability of the project in terms of as an investment proposal. So, you know, we've had a high-level feasibility study which says, yeah, there's nothing in here which suggests it couldn't happen. But at the end of the day, there needs to be a marketable business idea, and there needs to be a willingness from investors to put into that business in order for it to happen. The numbers that are being talked about in terms of the capital investment required need a bulletproof business case in order to, and I think that's what this next phase is about.
Thank you. And would it be correct to say that it's trying to put together an investment prospectus? Would that be correct?
I think ultimately that's what where we need to get to, because as I said, the capital expenditure required would need investors to come in, and they need to be convinced by a strong business case.
And just garnering a bit more of your advice there, by the change of having it rather than a project manager, sort of overlooking the process to get it to the next stage, changing that to using the money for contracting consultants in plural, do you think that will keep it on track to where it needs to be to get that investment prospectus, or moving on, or do you think that might endanger it to being a bit wayward or fulfilling its own destiny?
So through the chair, I think that is the concern, and again I go back to the additional clause that is put in there in terms of having a sign off from the chief executives of the council and then RDA. I would say we are really fortunate to have Mark here in the role. He brings a great deal of experience from Rotorua on destination management, as he spoke about, but also on gondolas and cycling as a visitor attraction. So I have some additional confidence that with his input we can get this to the right place. The concern, just going back to your question, Councillor, is around the management of the contractors, and going back to the Cycle Lift Society itself having to oversee that. I think if they had appointed a project manager, I can understand why that person wouldn't have had all the skills and would probably have had to use consultants themselves. And I think that the view from the society is that would entail additional costs. So you'd have both the project manager and the consultants. But the project manager would have enabled, I guess, the program to be pushed forward and kept on track. The risk, I guess, around consultants' use is that without careful management, it could be that the timelines push out.
And just briefly, in your opinion, after I've read this request for a proposal, it covers various things from economic impacts, spin-offs, etc. Getting down to the recommendation to proceed or not, what evidently doesn't show up here is its impact on the communities or residents being in a residential area, whether it comes from the Maitai side or the Brook side in the end. But you may be able to inform me that it's sort of covered at some stage here, but just the impact on residential, because at the end of the day, we're putting some energies and time into this, and the ratepayers are maybe not financially, but are taking a dividend or impact on this. So just an impact, not just traffic, but just impact in the environment. And when I say environment, the place where people live and reside.
So through the chair, that's a really good point. I think we have had some feedback from our community through the annual plan consultation that was generally supportive of the concept. Generally, there were obviously both sides presented. There are two opportunities for the community to have further say. At least two opportunities. One is through the resource consent process. If it goes ahead and there would be a resource consent process for the development. The second is council would need to turn its mind to the views of the community when it made a decision as landowner to allow a lease of the land for the development. So the Cycle Lift Society are well aware that those two hurdles would need to. I would expect that as part of their process, if it comes to a marketable investment opportunity, that there would be consultation carried out from their side as well in terms of what the opportunities were and how to mitigate some of the potentially negative impacts as well. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Ward, I'm just looking at the report, and I did expect more than a two-page, I think you call it a brief perhaps, for $50,000. I just was looking for more information at this point in time. One of the things that was on that was regarding the reporting, which is on our page 28, that the reporting will actually go back to the chairman of the Cycle Lift Society, and monthly reports would go back to them as well. I would have expected some reporting to come back to council or a committee. Did you anticipate that might be the case?
That wouldn't be usual in terms of providing funding. You would generally have an end of project report, and there would be some informal reporting in terms of just ensuring that the projects were on track. But we wouldn't usually have formal reporting back to committee, because you would then be, asking for a staff report at each stage, and I'm not sure what value that would add to the process. Okay,
so just through the chair, that the 4 months is still a viable amount of time for them to have this work done, which is what the timescale says.
So through the chair, I did speak to the chair of the Cycle Lift Society. The initial intention was that this would be received by the July governance meeting, and the timelines are based on approval at that meeting and the subsequent council meeting. We are now a month, 6 weeks behind that schedule. They are keen to appoint as soon as approval is given by council. So that would be in early September, after the 8th of September council meeting. And are optimistic that they could still meet the end of the year as a deadline. I'm not sure their optimism is well founded. I would imagine that it would push out a couple of months, bearing in mind the summer period, and I would expect it would be coming back around about February of next year would be more realistic.
So, Mr. Chair, I would like the committee to put maybe the February date for it to come back to the governance committee at that point. The other question I've got is really regarding the recommendation to council, Mr. Ward, and that's the second part, that the brief for the economic assessment be signed off. I'm just wondering what you would anticipate the brief would look like.
So I think through the chair that we need to clearly articulate the information that council would need to see in order to make an informed decision on releasing the further 50,000, but also with a longer term view in terms of making the decision as a landowner to grant any lease. One of the other things which we are also looking at is how the development fits strategically with other projects and programs that council has. So we have our off-trail strategy. We've signalled some development in terms of mountain biking. We've also given the NRDA the mandate to to promote destination management, and we need to understand how the cycle lift fits in that bigger strategic picture as well as a standalone business.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering whether the word brief would it be inappropriate for that to be changed to the business case, which I think includes a little bit more. Just wondering if Mr. Ward would like to comment whether I don't like the word brief. Sorry.
So through the chair, the intention is for us to sign off any terms of reference, or I've described it as a brief, for a consultant doing the economic assessment. So we would want to understand that the questions that we have are going to be answered by that piece of work. So it's not really the business case. It is a step before that in terms of ensuring that the right questions are asked of the consultants. Terms of reference may.
Thank you, Mr. Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Most of my questions have been answered during that discussion. One area that I am still not totally satisfied, and I think Councillor Skinner raised it. I would have thought it was really important that this first response, this $50,000, did give some indication of community impact of the people directly affected, as I think that would be an important factor going forward for further investigation or investment. So while it may not be definitive at that stage, still go through resource consent, obviously, I think an indication early on would be important information. So say my other questions I think have been answered, but I would like just one definition, please, or one clarification on quite a simple matter. Can somebody tell me what a zipline and alpine coaster monorail is?
About to more active people than myself around the table.
A zip line's like a flying fox, but you harness yourself into it, and so you don't hang on to anything. You're harnessed in on a line and go zoop from A to B. And a monorail, I assume, is a monorail, a train on one leg, zipping around somewhere. And a luge is a trolley.
Yeah, a coaster monorail. It just surprises me that the focus is then not on a monorail. I would have thought that would have been by far the most significantly high capital investment, if indeed it is a monorail running somewhere. But I await the final outcome with interest.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Morning, Madam. For some reason, you can correct me, Mr. Ward, if you can, but I'm getting the distinct impression that this project's gone quite cold. Cold to the extent that it seems to have been transferred from the proponents of the project to now looking like a Nelson City Council project. And I'm getting a little disturbed that we seem to be putting the majority of the effort into this exercise without even today seeing some surrounding support from the applicants. Secondly, I thought the report itself was very, very thin in detail. It didn't actually say to me anything that was positive with regard to covering some of the issues being raised. And I quote Councillor Skinner, you know, what sort of information have we had about the area that will directly, indirectly be affected? I'm really am getting as cold as everybody else because I can't see that support. Yeah, and here is the question. What sort of support have you had, in writing or verbal, from those who will surround this project at the end of the day? In other words, those people who feel it is a really good project, and I may be talking about the revamped EDA or the locals or those in the commercial sector. If you had this information, Chris, supplied to you for you to be able to come here today and say this is what we're recommending.
So through the chair, I attended a meeting with various representatives from related parties, I would say, from Mountain Bike Club, from the Great Trails Trust, and the tourism industry. I think there is and has been for some time a great deal of interest in the concept as and some value seen as this being something that potentially could attract people to stay in Nelson, or could attract people to Nelson, and could attract people to stay for longer in terms of something to do. And I guess the tourism sector as broadly is looking for those types of projects, which you know that bring people to Nelson and give them something to do to stay longer in the region. The Cycle Lift Society itself were very enthusiastic and have put a huge amount of effort in, particularly in the early years. They did put a great amount of time in. I think they've taken it to a point pretty much as far as they can go without additional funding coming in for additional advice. I do believe there is general support in the community for the concept. I don't believe there's a huge amount of support, if any, for council contributing to the business, but council is seen as a facilitator in terms of enabling the Cycle Lift Society to get to a point where it is an investment opportunity. The conversations I've had with Mr. Rawson are he can see some merit, but it does need to be refined and defined far better than before. If I could just comment on the community aspect of it, it's very difficult to go to the community with a project which hasn't a great deal of definition. As you know, there is still the option of coming from either the Mai Tai end or the Brook end, and we could do, the Cycle Lift Society could spend quite a bit of resource in trying to understand the community views of either of those communities without necessarily having the technical or the business case which would support one or other of those options. So I think the concerns that both Councillor Skinner and yourself have raised are valid. I'm just not sure that the timing is right at this stage, and it may be the second stage of this proposal once the project has been defined better, may be more opportune.
And can I just follow up very quickly with another question? Thank you for that, Mr. Ward. Secondly, have the Lift Society in any way raised funds to assist in this forthcoming study? Because I mean, initially the comment was we probably won't need any more money from you, and now we're looking at 50k. Are they prepared to contribute towards that study?
So through the chair, the trust understands that if it's to go beyond this initial stage, that any subsequent funding from council would be subject to them raising money for that project as well. They haven't raised, to my knowledge, that to date.
Thank you. Yeah, it's worth noting that, of course, on our annual plan, there has been an allocation of funding, but we're going through that process today to formalise it if the committee so decides to support the procedure. We've just about completed questions, but I've got a second question from Councillor Ackland.
I just, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Ward, I had concerns raised. I share the concerns from Councillor Skinner and Councillor Matheson about community engagement. Presumably, I mean, this goes through a resource consent process of 1 day, so presumably that's the point in time where the community really has the most input and the most response to the project. And in terms of an investment case, I would have thought, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but an investment case, the second branch of this, in terms of looking for investors, so a prospectus of some sort, would include an assessment, a risk assessment on things like resource consent issues, and that would therefore take account of community opinion around those issues, because of course that has a cost implication for a project. Am I right about that?
So through the chair, that's correct. As I said, there are two opportunities. One is through the resource consent process, but one is also when council turns its mind to a decision to grant any lease, and council would need to take community views into account at that stage as well. And you're absolutely correct. Both of those are risks to the project and should be addressed by the investment case.
We have now Councillor Fulton followed by the Mayor, and I would expect us to have completed questions at that stage.
I have a question around the, through the Chair, around the request for proposal not mentioning the Mai Tai as a potential location. So it only talks about the brook as the potential location. I'm just wondering if there's a rationale for that. I thought that both were on the table at the moment.
So through the chair, I mean, the goal is to get from the Cycle Lift Society, as is on page 27 of the agenda, is to get a gondola lift underway on Fringed Hill.
Yeah.
To get to they have indicated a preference and have been clear in their preference that the Brook side potentially, from the information to hand, is preferred. And that relates to crosswinds coming across the Mai Tai side, which may affect the days of operation. But the Cycle Lift Society understands quite clearly that the community views are important. You know, it contributed through the Brook Recreation Reserve Management Plan and heard the concerns that were expressed at that time as well. So they are looking, their ultimate goal is to get a gondola lift, a cycle lift, operational. They are quite relaxed if that turns out that it has to be at the Mai Tai side, provided the investment case is made for that. Now, it could be that the investment case is only for one side or the other, but then there's other community views and the consenting process. They would need to take that into account in terms of the viability of the proposition.
So a subsequent question, if this council was of the mind to ensure that both sites are considered in equal terms, particularly when I look at their revised and updated capital cost estimates, they only refer again to consulting with the Brook Sanctuary. They don't seem to mention consulting with, I don't know whether it was the Mai Tai Golf, I can't quite remember where the site was proposed for the Mai Tai Valley. Is that something as a council, as the governance committee, we would incorporate into our recommendation if we wanted both sites to be considered? Or do we not need to do that?
I think we need to be as open-minded as we can be, and
I'm just slightly concerned that the
best outcome is what we're looking to achieve, if there is going to be an outcome.
Yeah, I'm just slightly concerned that the request is focused just on the Brook, whereas I was under the impression that we should be considering both sites.
I think it's a valid point to consider that they decide where they want to do it.
Well, but we need to have feedback from the community as well. So
yeah, that will happen as it goes through the project. Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologise that I wasn't here at the commencement of this item, so this question may have already been addressed. I thought I caught the tail end of a discussion around time frame when I came in. On page 28, there's reference there to the project completion steps, and my apologies if I'm asking the Mr Ward to repeat an answer, but just so that I'm sure as we move through, is that time frame able to be delivered, or is there a suggestion that gets adjusted?
So through the chair, my belief is that that time frame was put together when the report was due to come to the 25th of July governance meeting. My belief is that the time frame needs to be extended out, and I suggested February of next year may be appropriate.
Thank you. Mr Chair, would you be prepared for me to now speak to this? Because I'd like to move the recommendation on the report. Well, there we go. It's been moved, and I'm happy to speak to it after morning tea if you
stage of the meeting would be to debate the motion which has been moved and seconded, but before we do, I think it would be quite opportune if we ask Mr. Rawson to join us and to convey to us his impressions, thoughts of where we're getting, what's been happening.
Through the chair, thank you very much. I'll just make a couple of observations from the discussion that you've just had going on. I totally understand the sort of what are you being asked for this funding for? My observation of that, if you think about it as a pre-commercial investment case, what does that mean? A pre-commercial investment case being identifying a yes/no answer, primarily, of whether this is commercially viable or not. You're not likely to get a direct yes/no answer, but you are likely to get a fairly strong direction in that space with a few parameters that sit around the sort of the outcome of that question. And those really key parameters will also identify the key factors that any investor would be wanting to consider in an investment case to actually take this from concept to commercialisation. So in my view, the pre-commercial business case is, it really does set out the yes, no, and all of those really key parameters that sit around the decision making of particularly private sector investors to actually carry this project off. The other comment I'd make in that space is, why would you need to do that? Why is that important? From my observation, this is quite an interesting project. It's got a real ability potentially to have a significant impact on length of stay in a destination, and it matches your products quite well. But the likely investors into this sort of project, they're pretty well known. They're fairly easily identifiable in a New Zealand sense, because my observation of this sort of project is not 100 people coming together with a fairly small investment who would form a company and be able to make this work. If you look at these types of investments around the world, and the ones that work really well, you know, they've got one or two investors who pretty much are looking after the delivery of the whole product, and then there's many other players that join in as part of that product. So what I am trying to say there is that I think the part of the project would also sort of identify the characteristics of those types of investors, and the last thing I would say is, for those 4 or 5 sort of pretty likely suspects in respect of actually wanting to invest in a project like this, in the current visitor industry situation in New Zealand, there is a number of potential opportunities for them floating around at the moment, and they're all looking pretty hard, and there is some high visitor number destinations that have a number of projects where they're already heavily invested. So the pre-commercial business case is a really important part of actually raising potentially a project that has some really good outcomes for them and the community, and putting it on their radar screen and giving us some tools to entice them to think a little bit broader than their current investment spectrums. And certainly, I think you mentioned earlier on through the chair, attracting the likes of some government support for this type of project is probably not beyond the realms of because it's more regionally focused. So just thought I'd maybe add that comment, just listening to the conversation that you've had here on the table. That would be my interpretation of what we're looking to get out the end of this piece of work.
Thank you, Mark. I hadn't intended to take this further to the question stage, but Councillor Matheson will permit.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing this, and Mark, thank you for stepping into the breach. I think you heard our concerns, and actually I just need to ask you one quick question, because you are making me think. Pre-commercial business case, are you saying that is what the $50,000 hopefully will achieve? Bringing into play those parties that may or may not have an interest in this development long term?
From my perspective, it would identify the likely characteristic of those parties. I won't say exactly who they are, but it does effectively give you the tool, or us as the destination, the tool to at least start that conversation with a level of credibility and capability to see whether they're serious or not, and what their really key investment parameters would be and the barriers that they may see. Because when we go from the pre-commercial to the real commercial decision making, we won't have been able to identify all the barriers that they may see as part of, however their business is evolving in a New Zealand sense. So yes, I think the answer is that's what I'm anticipating.
I'm now looking to make progress, and it's been moved and seconded that a report be received firstly.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to speak to the motion. This paper today has evolved over a lengthy period of time, and I can understand the concerns around the table that there appears to be a lack of enthusiasm for this project. But I'd have to say that is absolutely counter to the feedback that I am getting from our community. When we went through the long-term plan process, we had a focus on economic development and partnership. This is a paper that enables council to operate as an enabler, to provide the platform for others to seek investment and the right type of investment and the right partners for development in our region. I've listened to the conversation about what's important for our region, and we know that we have opportunities in the tourism area. We know that we have a lifestyle that's attractive for people to want to live here, to work here, to invest here. Facilities like this one are part of that package, and I think the approach that the officers have taken is absolutely appropriate. It's setting some gateway checks in the process. It's ensuring that the investment or pre-commercial investment proposal that is put forward is suitably rounded, that it fits into the regional context, and it's allowing us to partner and seek investment from others. And I'm pleased that Mark identified government in this, because you could say, and I listened to the discussion, that says, well, why does council need to be here? Well, council does need to be here at this stage because we are one of the signals that central government will be looking for. If they're looking to invest in a regional tourism enterprise, to put central government money into that, the money is there, it is available to the regions to access, then they will be wanting to see a signal of support from this council. Not as an investor, but an enabler of economic development and potential for our city. And I think this one is worthy of going to the next stage.
Thank you, Your Worship. The seconder, do you wish to speak at this stage?
I think that if you look at what the Nelson Cycle Lift Society has done to date in a volunteer capacity, it's actually quite amazing. And this is an enormous project. It's not a project which volunteers can undertake. And I think that perhaps the concerns around the table, that's what we're seeing, that maybe people have lost their enthusiasm slightly because they're all working in a volunteer capacity, and it is a huge project. Even just determining where it will be is a massive undertaking. So I think that this does send a signal from council that we support development in our region, and I think it is about tourism and growth and creating a place where people do want to come and live. I think that we have much to offer, but the more we offer, the better. So I really do support this, and if I look back during the annual plan submissions and all the mountain bikers who came in supporting this, but supporting the fact that we needed to ensure there's other infrastructure in place as well, so the toilets and the facilities they saw as very important as well. But I think that this is quite a long-term plan. It's not something which is going to be constructed in the short term, but we need to begin to have those conversations and ensure that we are an enabling council.
Thank you. Just for clarification, the mover and seconder, you're moving both the receipt of the report and the recommendation to council?
Yes.
So we're discussing the whole thing. Is there any further discussion? Yes, there is, from the Deputy Chair.
I support this motion. I support it going to council.
Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We're at a very early stage, and I think we need to know if this project fits with the overall strategic direction this council wants to take in terms of economic development, the sort of city that we would like to see into the future. And we also need to know if this is a project that is economically and viable enough to attract suitable investment from into the region. And those are questions that we don't know at the moment. And so this investment helps us get some of those answers. To stop at this stage, I think, would be counterproductive. We need to know, and for that, I am speaking in support of the motion.
Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My decision is really based on the fact that we took this out to the annual plan, and the response that we got back at that point in time was actually very supportive. I do have some concerns. Some of the concerns are that there hasn't been a lot of activity lately from the Cycle Lift Society. There will be some talk in the community that we're putting $50,000 in, but I'm looking at this $50,000 to give us some certainty for the future to decide. And I'm hoping that at the end of this, when the report comes in, that it'll be very clear whether to proceed or whether to not proceed. And on that basis, I will support this recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Noonan. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I'll support the recommendation going forward, but I am concerned at the brevity of the report and the project plan. After 6 years, I find that some of what is in the project plan should have already been covered. And I'm also concerned that when this first came to council, we were asked for our support, and the then Mayor agreed that we should put up $15,000 towards a feasibility study, which we did, and that's actually what it says. But I'm just starting to get a little bit concerned that the role of the council in relation to this, I have no problem. I think it's a brilliant idea, and after seeing this operating up in Rotorua, this similar sort of thing, I think it's what this council or what this community needs, and I'm all for it. But it's a commercial enterprise, and I'm just a bit reluctant as to where our pockets fit in relation to when is enough. Thank you.
Thank you. And just in commenting on that, I think if we can concentrate on the concept, we're simply enabling. But Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I deliberately question these projects, and I think that is our role, to actually question. And in this particular case, I've just felt that we had a situation on our hands where our senior officer was sitting there by himself, feeling obviously very lonely, and but handled himself extremely well, I must admit, considering the type of questions that we were putting towards this project. I'll support it going through to full council, but I make a small request, and I don't think it's something out of the order, that when we do put it for discussion at full council, we at least have some physical support from the Lift Society here to hear the debate. Even if the Mayor allows them public forum time just to talk briefly about where they're coming from, that would be hugely welcome, I would think, to show that the project is more embraced than just having an officer speaking on their behalf. And I want to thank Mark for filling in a very interesting gap that we didn't have an answer to, and I appreciate his comments and his knowledge. So yes.
Thank you. I think that completes discussion today. So I now propose to Your Worship, you wish to? Mr. Murray, I didn't receive any indication you wished to speak.
I thought you, my apologies, but I did think you saw that, obviously,
No, I didn't.
confused with Councillor Matheson here. Look, I think it's clear council was supporting this project. The annual plan has put $100,000 aside for this year for various projects. For mine in here, They've said, can we have the first $50,000, but they've changed the resolution because that was going to go towards a manager. They're now saying we're going to engage consultants. My concern remains the same. I hear the pre-commercial business case is going to be put up. My concern is that 50,000 isn't going to cut that. There's no evidence in here that we will be able to achieve that plan with the $50,000 that they're given, which I assume is what the Chief Executive and Mark's going to cover off. And I suppose I would be a little bit more comfortable if I had some indication from the supplier of that work that yes, they could do it within that budget. And then, so in the absence of that information, we're saying yes, Chief Executive and Mark, look after this for us. I'm also comfortable with that because they're quite capable of that, but I'd be concerned that 50 is not enough to get them to that point, and if it is 75 or 100 or 60 or whatever over that 50, how is that going to get funded? Because we do want to reach that point of here is a pre-commercial report. And that question isn't answered. How will that excess be funded?
The other point that you raised earlier is an interesting one during question time when you asked a question, would the $50,000 be refunded? Should this be a viable project and become very profitable and the society sell it off? Perhaps that could be addressed when it comes up to council. Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just exercise my right of reply. I think one of the reasons why projects like this take a long time to come to fruition is because as a council we haven't yet really understood the economic potential around sports and recreation. And as a council we continue to not have enough focus on this area. This is one of the examples of where I think we need to really look at the assets that we own, in this case land, in this case a very big hill, in this case a hill that could create the longest downhill ride in the southern hemisphere, actually if not the world I think, and think about the potential that we have to enable others to do great things for our city. Now, yes, this is a gateway, and it's got to go through its process, and it may go through that pre-commercial stage, and the answer may be it doesn't stack up. But I'm interested enough in the potential of this region and the potential of the assets that we own on behalf of the community to deliver benefits to Nelsonians, to grow our visitor opportunities, to have people stay that extra night, that extra two, to see this region really excel in these areas to go through this step. And I'm very hopeful that we're going to see something that comes back that is going to be inviting investment into our region for a facility like this.
Thank you, Your Worship. That completes the debate. I will now put the question that the report be received. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. And the second part, the recommendation to council, as listed on page 23. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 10, pages 47 to 54. Nikki, which Nikki is going to? Nikki, Ms. Harrison, and perhaps Mr. Peters might like to speak to this report. Pages 47 to 54, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to talk to this briefly. The purpose of this survey contained in the terms of reference is to help clarify and inform the new subcommittee as to what might need to be a focus in its plan for the future. And a self-assessment, I think, is always useful. I'd like to thank those members of this committee as well as members of the subcommittee who participated in the survey. It's quite useful in a number of areas. It shows the areas where that we seem to we score highly on conforming and reflecting our terms of reference. So in some senses, I think it's often a good place, but it also highlights some of those areas where there is still work to do, particularly in some of the detailed aspects, such as business continuity and those areas. But to me, a large value is in the comments that are received. The overall, when you graph it and tabulate it, the overall score out of 4 is 3.3, obviously with variations ranging from 3.7 down to 2.2 within that. So again, my thanks to everybody, and I'd be very happy to move that the report be received and the contents be noted.
It's been removed by Mr. Peters and seconded by Councillor Ackland. I had a question. Do you think it could be focused in on you said that it highlights areas where we may need to look at. Very difficult to do that from the way the survey has been presented to us. Is it possible that it could be refined and focused down to the nub of the points which may need consideration?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will make sure that the incoming subcommittee has some of the tabulated and summarised detail, the graph detail, and those areas of the averages by each of the questions, which does highlight, as I say, some things like the need for focus on business continuity and some of those other gaps. So we just provided the results of the survey and the comments, but there is further analysis behind it, which will be made available to the subcommittee.
That's very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Peters. No further discussion. I'll put it that it be received. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. Carried. Now, I'd like to invite Mr. Kearney to the table, along with Tracy, for the draft annual report. And just before Tracy presents it, I'll invite Bede to give us his comments on his very initial look at this draft report that's in front of us today. Bede.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Our audit's commenced. The team's on site from Monday, and so we're obviously at the very front end. So nothing really to report in terms of audit findings, if you like. In terms of the document, haven't had it for a long time, so I've had some initial discussions with staff on both the financial areas and the non-financial, the service performance information, and so we'll just work through those. In terms of the financials, there's relatively a couple of technical type issues that we'll work through as part of the normal process. Probably the focus in terms of the non-financial information was really more about, from my perspective, how it could work better as a document rather than necessarily compliance, passing audit tests or muster. We see the document as a whole being a communication document between the council and the community, so I think that's an important part, role of it to communicate effectively. So we've only really just touched base very briefly this morning on that, and I guess that's something we'll work through as part of the audit process.
Thank you, Bede. We'll look forward to, in due course, hearing more. Tracy, would you like to present the report? Oh, sorry, Nikki's going to? Nikki, of course. I should have realised. Tracy's the financial whiz, but the overall whiz is Nikki.
Thank you. Yes, through the chair. So you have a copy of the draft annual report, which is going off to audit. So this is just for you to note, but it will be coming back after the election to the first meeting of council for adoption. And at that point, we wouldn't be able to make any substantive changes and still meet our statutory deadline. So if there are any areas where you've got questions or comments, we're happy to take those now. Obviously, the financials is a sort of a factual relaying of our expenditure and other matters, but there are also in the document areas where we draw out projects and try and highlight them to the community, and so you may have some feeling about which projects we've chosen to draw attention to. And we have, as Bede has mentioned, had a good discussion this morning, just indicating some areas that we might look at further, and I think those comments, those initial comments from audit are very helpful, and they're directing us to in the performance or the service level and performance tables behind each activity to focus more on the story we're telling about our performance rather than a sort of a scorecard of achieved or not achieved. And I think staff will be very happy to take that on, maybe even to the extent of removing that column which says achieved and not achieved, doing more about the comments where we talk about what we've achieved, why, whether there were barriers, how we might address it in future. So there's a better level of understanding from the community. So I think that's a very helpful input. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Yeah, it's a major document. Those of us who have taken the duty to go through it will have seen this is a major amount of work in there. It's a good report in my view. Now I'm going to take questions. I've got Mr. Peters, followed by Mr. Councillor Matheson, followed by Mr. Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the production of this report. I agree with the comments made by yourself, Nikki, and that I think those would be good changes. Appreciate that this is still work in progress, and things can change. Also appreciate that some things like the notes are not yet completed. But as I don't have necessarily the opportunity to come back to this report personally, the financial side is very much in line with what the expectation has been created through the Audit Risk and Finance report, with one query that would just satisfy me to know, and that the figure I was a little bit surprised to see was the loss and revaluations, which has had some impact on it, and that was not something that I was expecting. With your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just ask Tracy to explain that to me so I can sleep well.
Through the Chair, that's not an unexpected question. Firstly, one of the major items that's missing from those financials is our normal annual revaluation of infrastructure assets. And that is in the region of 20 million. So we're looking really at a net 3 million. The 17 million that you see in front of you is related to Nelson Airport. We have encouraged the airport to move away from historical cost in terms of their balance sheet and to revalue their assets. One of their assets is an interest in the land. The land is owned by council. It is on a 60-year peppercorn lease. The result of them revaluing that land in their own books to 25 million is that we have to revalue or impair it in our books, and that was at about 17.8 million, I think it was. Then we take on half of their revaluation in the group accounts.
Thank you very much. Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, because I had some reasonably free time in the last couple of weeks or so, actually, for the first time, I think, in some time, read the annual report. It's confession time. Let's be honest. But to actually answer my question, I need Mr. Levertis in the room, and he's just gone to powder his nose, I think. So I wonder if you can just hold fire until he returns, and then I would like him to answer a question regarding water quality.
Happy to do that. Mr. Murray?
Thank you.
Questions?
Yes, thank you. I read the 251-page report with great interest. It was great. I'd like to run the committee through page by page, but we'll be here all day. And I'm sure there's something for everybody in here. Look, I just wanted to make a couple of comments in here. First of all, as Mr. Peters said, the numbers in here very much stack up with what we've been looking at through the year, so there are no surprises, except for that revaluation reserve, as Mr. Peters pointed out. And I would perhaps encourage a bit more disclosure about that in the annual report itself, so that it's clear that that's where it's come from. Because I sort of went diving through to go, oh, what's that all about? Perfectly reasonable explanation, just couldn't identify it within. So a bit of an expanded note would be very, very helpful. I think I just would like to highlight a couple of matters for the committee. First of all, the first point is on the financial report, and I think it is on page 180. Council was running a surplus from its operations of 4.6 million, which is round about what we thought it would be. We keep asking Ms Hughes every meeting what that's going to look like. But the thing about that number is this, we are living within our means, and that's an important point. Council is creating enough income, so to speak, through rates and other income to cover its costs, and that's a really quite an important feature because we are not utilising other sources, i.e. debt, to fund our operations. So that's the first sort of figure I wanted to draw your attention to. And the second one is in the balance sheet, which is the next page. You'll see there that as at 30 June, our total borrowings are at $90 million, thereabouts. Again, Ms Hughes gave us a very good thumb up on that at a previous meeting, saying that's where she thought it would land, and it has indeed done that. The budget in the budget column is 119 million, and you'll see that we're some 30 or 29 million short of where we thought we would be, and some of that's because some of the infrastructural asset program is to be carried over, but some of it is also genuine savings. So the debt level is always something that people talk about, and it's important to know that we are not at where we thought we would be at 90 million versus 119 million. And again, if you have a look at the year before, we were at 76 million at the end of last financial year, and so we're only really gone forward by $14 million during the year with all of that capital works and programs that's gone on. So, so that's just worthwhile pointing out. So the council's in a very, very strong financial position, in my view. It's in great shape. It's got the capacity for more debt. It's well within its covenants, its policies, and for the new term, for the new councillors, they've got plenty of opportunity ahead of them. That's all I'd like to say.
Very much. There wasn't many questions in there, but all very valuable information, which I was very pleased to hear.
Just one other minor matter. The headings on page 181 haven't sort of come through as they have for the other ones. Just a minor matter.
Thanks. I'm sure that'll be attended to, Tracy. Mr. Levertis has returned to the meeting, so I'll go to Councillor Matheson, who had a question for him.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair. Mr. Levertis, I want to refer to page 80 of the annual report because it gives me the opportunity to ask a question which is being frequently asked of me, and I no doubt several other councillors in the last week or two, and that's regarding our water. And due to the due to the situation in Havelock North and Hastings, it's raised all sorts of questions as to water supply, potable water supply, and whether we as a city are in a managed position should something go wrong. Our water quality and our water delivery is extremely good. It's AB, but should, because of our open catchment, should at any stage we run into a similar problem, can you just give us a reassurance, or otherwise are we in a position to be able to handle such an event? Thank you.
Through the Chair, yes, I can give you assurances that we are able to handle such an event, but I'll just give you some fundamental differences between what's happening up in Havelock North and ourselves. So we don't take our water from an aquifer, we take it from surface runoff. We strictly control our catchments in terms of the protozoa. So there's a couple of things. There's the viruses that cause Campylobacter, and as well as the protozoa, Giardia and Cryptosporidium. We filter those out through our ultrafiltrate membrane plant, the protozoa, the Giardia and Cryptosporidium. So we've negated that. So for those to make its way into the reticulation is well protected. We also have always chlorinated our water. So we chlorinate our water, we treat it, and we chlorinate it at the clear water tank, which then feeds the city. We have a vigorous testing regime across the city, about 17 locations, a minimum of 9 testing regimes a week. We also test our reservoirs on a weekly basis, so once a week we probably do a minimum of 25 tests. We test for pH, we test for E. coli, we test for turbidity, and we test for residual chlorine in the extremities of our catchments. We also have an early warning system when the residual chlorine does drop below a certain point, and we have very, very good relations with the Nelson Marlborough District Health Board as well as our water treatment plant operators, and we address those before they become a problem. So the situation between ourselves and our counterparts up north are very, very different, and we are very, very vigilant in terms of our water source, how we protect it, and the number of tests that we do. We also have an A-B grading, as you know. A represents the source and the treatment, and B represents the grading of our reticulation, with A being the highest. So we are right up there in terms of A-B. We also have a number of initiatives, for example, backflow prevention, which further protects contamination of our water sources from a number of places. So we have all of these initiatives in place within our asset management plan. So our systems are very different. We have a vigorous testing regime, and we are comfortable as to where we are at the moment. We will never rest on our laurels, though, and we take this issue very, very seriously.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Yes, I've been with some satisfaction not satisfaction what's happened to Havelock North, but the satisfaction of knowing that we are unlikely to have it because we chlorinate our water. Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Chair, just a couple of questions. I'm looking at page 106 of our agenda, 107. In terms of, I've read the reports that are probably of more interest to me than others, and these were basically water quality in terms of our fresh water. And I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity to put a bit more commentary in the comments as to the reasons why we've had the incursions from for the water quality in terms of overflow from rainfall events into probably the ageing infrastructure?
Can you answer that, Leah?
Yes, through the chair. In fact, this is one of the discussions we were having with Bede this morning, is that part of telling the story for our community was actually to be expanding some of that information where we can, and saying why there were certain trends, what we intended to do about them. So that'll be one of the things we're looking at in this next period before it comes back to the first meeting after council.
Yeah, well, just in terms of feedback, as you say, well, we know what's happening, and if we want to fix that, it does come with a cost factor, which we need to sort of, I suppose, forewarn our community that there's no such thing as a free lunch, I guess. And the second one was the difference with terms of waste going to refuge. One say we've not achieved it, and the other part says that we're trending downwards. So how's that can be? If I look at where we're at, I'm trying to find the first part. Yeah, if you look at page 108, amount of tonne per waste resident is just at 0.6. Recorded waste was so we're saying we're trending downwards, but the numbers say we're going upwards. We'll look at page 107. Amount of, yeah, 6. Maybe I'm misreading it, but it's at 15-16 it was 0.6 tonne per resident, and 14-15 it was 0.5. But it's high, but it's been trending down. So I'm just wondering why the commentary is why we've bucked the trend.
Yes, through the chair, what that was trying to say is that we've got a long downwards trend that we can demonstrate, but we've 1 year which has just gone against that trend. So we can explain that a bit better so it's clear, but really we need to see what happens next year to see if this is a problem or just an anomaly.
Yeah, I just think it's important as if we move into our joint, a single landfill joint waste management strategy is finally coming to fruition.
No further questions. I have got a request that something be added to the annual report, and I'm looking at page 234 of the agenda, which outlines payments made, remuneration. I would like to see included in it, in the terms of openness and telling our ratepayers who provide the money where it's being spent, the remuneration that's paid to our two appointed members, Mr. Murray and Mr. Peters. So I'd be very keen to see that included. I think it would be valuable information.
Through the chair, if you refer to page 233, you'll see about 2/3 of the way down that there's a paragraph starting key advisors include 3 committee members who are external to the organisation. That may cover your point off, Mr. Chair.
It does. 1,000 per. It probably could be repeated in the other one, but it is covered. I also would suggest that I receive payments for dealing with district licensing committee activities, and that's not listed there. It could be included if we're going to be fully reporting full. Well, I've been very busy over the last few months with the chairman being away, and I've had to fill in for him, and I have to be remunerated. I'm not asking for it, but I am, and I think it should be reported. Your Worship?
Mr. Chair, could I just seek clarification then? On page 234, there is what is called payments for commissioner hearings. Are they not the district licensing matters? Are they the resource consent matters?
I have presumed they are, but I may be wrong.
Thank you.
Ms. Harrison, can you answer that question? They include that. Oh, well, okay, that's fine. But perhaps it could be notated that it's not just resource management hearings, it's district licensing hearings as well, to be totally correct. Is there any further questions, comments? It's been moved by Councillor Davey and seconded by the Deputy Chair. There's no further discussion. I'll put it all in favour, please say aye. Against, no. Carried. Thank you very much, Nikki. As I indicated earlier, it's a great job. Thank you for the financial side. Next item is item number 12, rates remissions for the year ending. Who's going to present the report? Is it going to be Nikki or is it going to be Nikki? Theo's here, but we can refer to him if we need to. Nikki, thank you. Pages 244 to 255.
Thank you. Through the Chair, this report really is just to update the committee on the rates remissions that were given in the previous financial year. We've just started bringing this to the committee last year, so this is sort of going to be an annual report, which effectively gives you a bit more detail than what is actually contained in our full annual report. One of the points I'd make is that the rates remissions are reasonably consistent with the prior financial year. There's been a decrease in the excess water credit remissions this year, and that just really relates to the fact that there haven't been as many large remissions given or requested. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. A call for any questions? Mr. Murray.
Yes, thank you for the report. On page 255 of the agenda, we have I suppose a wee bit of a breakdown of just where the remissions have occurred. One of the larger ones is the Nelson Golf Club Inc. at 34,000, and then towards the bottom we've got Golf Green Nelson Airport, which was a wee bit confusing because I don't think I've played golf at Nelson Airport, but just wondered what the golf green at Nelson Airport was, and the golf club itself at 34, is that by matter of legislation that they can get remission, or is that on a case-by-case basis?
Through the Chair, I'll pass over to Theo.
Okay, the golf club
remission of $34,000. That's not through mandatory remission. It's because it has a liquor license, so it's a remission through our policies instead. So, and the golf green $5,000 further down, that's the golf green practice green. That was a remission granted under the previous legislation, and the remission policy still stands to date. So it's two different areas.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? The new council will, of course, review its remissions policy. But what we've got today is what is happening under the current policy. So there's no further questions. It's been moved and seconded. Councillor Davey moved it, didn't he? Yes. Seconded by Councillor McGurk. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. The ayes have it, carried. Rates remissions takes us on to carry forwards. Item 13. Nikki Harrison, Ms Harrison, pages 256 to 262. Oh, Shane, welcome. 256. And Tracy. We've got it right now, at least they have. So, yeah, please speak to the report.
Through the Chair, thank you. This report has come to this committee, I'd just like to remind you, because the detail wasn't available for the last meeting of the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee. Officers have spent quite a lot of time going through and analysing differences against budget to come up with what we have in the recommendations of this report. It's pleasing to note that there has actually been $2.6 million worth of savings in our capital budgets this year. This is the final report after the preliminary report that went to the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee on the 23rd of June. For those of you who have a photographic memory, it's the carry forward that we're asking for is quite close to the carry forward that was indicated on the report to that meeting. Happy to take any questions.
Mr Peters, Chairman of Audit, Risk and Finance Committee, have you any questions or comments?
Just a comment, Mr Chairman. This information, this concept did come to the Audit, Risk and Finance. As Ms Hughes has said, we didn't have the detailed information. However, the expectations that were created are borne out by these, and the Audit, Risk and Finance Subcommittee was happy with the principles around this as discussed. And the only reason it's come here is one of timing, not of materiality. So the Audit, Risk and Finance Subcommittee was happy with the information as it appeared at that time.
Thank you. Is there any further questions? Councillor Matheson, I thought I saw your antenna up before, but I wasn't sure.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Since I don't have an absolute photographic memory, what was that figure?
Through the Chair, that figure was 15.8 million.
15. Thank you.
Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr Chair. In the report at paragraph 3.6, there's some discussions around the projections exercise and a comment that this exercise is no longer completed. Could I get some feedback on why we don't undertake the projections exercise any longer and why that's an appropriate way to report?
Through you, Mr Chair. Excuse me, my voice comes and goes at the moment. It used to be that in the past we would make projections of spend to completion of projects at various stages during the year. Now we do that monthly at the end of each claim period from the contractor, and it means that the contract managers have much better control and understanding of their projects rather than projecting at set timeframes during the year. So it's kind of it's a much better way, I think, of doing our business.
Thank you.
just in terms of that, the projected figures used to be of some value to the committee, giving an early indication of possible variances. You don't see any difficulties there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, my thoughts would be that we would still report that information, but it would be based on more regular projecting done every month rather than at set times during the year.
Happy with that, Mr. Peters? Good. All right, I don't think there's any further discussion. Sorry, there is, Your Worship, and Councillor Rainey.
Just one further question from me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In relation to paragraph 3.9, there's a comment at the end that the senior leadership team review the information in terms of the items for carry forward and to ensure that the requests are justified. What's the assessment process that's undertaken there? Is there some form of criteria against which projects are assessed to decide whether they can move forward or not?
Through the Chair, this is referring to operating expenditure in 3.9, and yes, there is some criteria. The criteria is basically that they, SLT, will only consider carry forwards if it's project related. So we're not going to be carrying forward annual budgets for things like maintenance. We're only going to be looking at where, for instance, there's a big project like Nelson Nature, and for various reasons certain projects haven't been finished before 30th of June, so we'll carry forward that money so it can be finished in the new financial year. So our ongoing annual day-to-day bits of things that we do, that is not considered for carry forward.
Before I go to Councillor Rainey, the one area of significant carry forward is in the Parks and Recreation area. Something like 6 million, is it, for that one activity of council? Are you anticipating that in future years we won't be going to that level of under expenditure, you might say?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to confirm, are you referring to capital?
Yeah, I'm looking at capital on page 259 and on 258. Parks and Active Recreation, carry forward to 2016-17, 6.8 million.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the bulk of that carry forward related to the Trafalgar Centre in Rutherford Park. So they were specific projects that were unique to 15-16, 16-17 years.
Good explanation, thank you. Councillor Rainey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on the same page 259, the carry forwards on Rutherford Trafalgar Park development and Trafalgar Centre reopening, the actuals being what they are compared to what was budgeted. Does that essentially mean that the project's slightly behind?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Essentially what happened with that project is the scope increased. So the time available to complete what was originally proposed needed to be extended as well, and that's why there's carry forward into next year.
Thank you. And so subsequent question through you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the arts work program 1134 under social on the same table, I'm presuming that the 148,603 carry forward to the 16-17 year goes into the fund. It's an accumulating fund. Is that correct, or does it just become part of the budget for next year's art work fund?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this relates to 3 specific bits of work, one of which has been completed. That's the Welcome Cloak on Saltwater Creek. There are 2 other projects, Rocks in the Sky and the Waka Landing site. So it related to 3 specific sites, artworks.
Cheers, thanks.
Right, I think we have completed comments. I'll call for a mover and seconder. Moved by Mr. Peters, Chairman of the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee, and seconded by Chairman of Community Services Committee, Councillor Rainey. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. Carried. Now we move to the reports of committees. Audit, Risk and Finance Subcommittee report dated 4th of August on pages 263 to 268. Mr. Peters?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The meeting was held on the 4th of August, and I would move that the unconfirmed minutes of that meeting be received.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McGurk. All in favour, please say aye. Carried.
Further
Item
business of
14.1.
Further business of that meeting was in relation to the internal audit plan. We had been advised that external resource would be necessary and a figure to come back to that committee for subsequent recommendation to Governance Committee and Council, and that the unbudgeted expenditure of 50,000 be approved for engaging that external resource to assist in delivering the internal plan during 16-17. I'm happy to move that.
Been moved, seconded, Councillor McGurk. Any comment, questions? None. I'll put it in all favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
A further recommendation that came out of that discussion was to Governance Committee and to Council to note the internal audit findings, the recommendations and the status of the action plans arising from the internal audit activity up to 30th of June 2016. Again, I'm happy to move that.
Moved. Seconded, Councillor McGurk again. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
And finally, Mr. Chairman, I was pleased to take that opportunity at that meeting to thank members of the subcommittee, the CEO and his staff for the support shown to the Audit, Risk and Finance Subcommittee since its formation, the support given to me. And I would like to, if I can, reiterate and extend those thanks to yourself as the Chairman of this committee and to members of this committee and to other councillors for their assistance and support for the Audit, Risk and Finance Subcommittee. And thank you for the opportunity to serve as Chairman of that and as a member of this committee. It has been a privilege and it has been interesting, and thank you all very much for that opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Peters, for your kind words, and you will note that I express my appreciation in the Chairman's report. We'll move now to item number 15, the Commercial Subcommittee. Mr. Murray.
Thank you.
Pages 269 to 272.
Yep, 269, 272. The unconfirmed minutes of the Commercial Subcommittee are there to be received by this committee. It notes two matters really. One, first matter is that we moved into public excluded pretty quickly, so there was no actual business there. But the second matter, again, like Mr. Peters, I took the opportunity to thank the committee and other members for attending the committee's meetings. The input's been greatly received and valued. And to express my thanks for having the privilege of working with you all in these committees, the Audit and Risk and Governance. It's been a fantastic couple of years, and I've really enjoyed it. Hopefully you all feel the same way, which I think I'm hearing you do, so it's all good. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you care to move?
Yes.
Been moved and seconded by Councillor Noonan, who's a member of the Commercial Subcommittee. I'll put it. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. Carried. Thank you very much. Item 16. A motion to move into public excluded, including the late item on forestry, which we've already resolved will be included in the agenda for the confidential section of the meeting. It's been moved by Mr. Peters and seconded by Councillor Davey. Is there any discussion on the exclusion of the public motion? There isn't. I'll put it. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. Carried. I'll declare this part of the meeting finished at this stage and refer us